Hey everybody, welcome back to another Tech Talk edition. Today is a cold and drizzly day here in North Texas. It's freezing cold outside and there's snow flurries going on all around in different areas, but we're getting wet rain that might freeze later. But I'm not going to let that stop us today. And yeah, I'm still getting past a sore throat, but feeling much better now and have my voice back, and it's time to do another video. And this week I want to talk about the speaker upgrade process and how it relates to vintage speakers versus modern speakers versus custom speakers, and how that even compares to just purchasing a kit. So let's go right at this and take on some of the questions that I get every single day. Every day I'll get a question of, can you upgrade my Wharfdale whatchamacallits? And of course, I always have to answer, yes, I can upgrade anything. Anything can be upgraded. Doesn't matter what it is, how expensive it is. There's always some performance left on the table, trust me. It's just like when General Motors comes out with a brand new Corvette, the aftermarket is sitting in the wings just waiting for the release, because they're going to come out with upgrades for everything from one end of that car to the other. The audio industry is no different. We can upgrade anything. There's always ways that you can make something sound better, especially when you get into speakers. So, can I upgrade your whatever? Yeah, we can upgrade it. Not a problem. Question number 2 I get following that is, how much will it cost? Guys, I have no idea how much it's going to cost for me to upgrade something that you hadn't even sent to me yet. I don't even know what you've got, what it's going to involve, how much upgrade it's going to involve, if it's going to be redesigning the crossover, upgrading the crossover. I don't know. I don't know until you send me the speaker. So, step number 1 in the upgrade process, send me one of the speakers. First thing I'm going to have to do, like this one that showed up last week, I'm going to have to measure and test it and see what it's doing. Then I'm going to evaluate it. I'm going to give you recommendations, and we're going to go from there. Now, a lot of you guys are asking me about upgrading vintage speakers, and there's some of the old vintage speakers that are good candidates for upgrades. There's some of the old vintage speakers that are not good candidates for upgrades. There's certain things that I just can't fix. I mean, when you take some of those old speakers and you got a tweeter in each corner, different mid-ranges all scattered out on the baffle, and then a big woofer at the bottom, there's going to be some problems that's going to present that I can't fix. Especially when you start adding multiple tweeters and you've got them spaced out all over the box. As you know, when you have a tweeter on one side and a tweeter on the other, and they're both playing the same frequency range, as soon as you move a little bit left or right so that there's a little time delay from one tweeter versus the other, they're going to cancel each other out. There's going to be a huge hole in the response. I can't fix that. That is a design flaw. That's things that they did way back then that they didn't really understand the problems that it's going to cause. Another thing is, some of those vintage speakers have great big wide baffles, and they were designed to just sit on the floor. And there's no getting around that stuff. Those speakers are always going to sound like they're playing from that baffle forward. As time went on in the high-end audio industry, it became apparent that one of the virtues of the playback was creating a three-dimensional sound field. You can't do that with a great big speaker that's sitting on the floor in the corner that has a great big wide baffle on it. And you can't get that with speakers that are pressed up against the wall. To really get that three-dimensional sound field, speakers start getting narrow. You start minimizing this area around the drivers, and you're encouraged to bring those speakers well out into the room and treat the room. Now you're getting a very holographic effect. You're getting a three-dimensional sound field. And when you go back to those vintage speakers, it doesn't matter how good the parts are, how great the drivers were back then. There's no fixing that. It's still a great big wide baffle, and it's still usually sitting on the floor, and it's just going to have that sound coming at you from those spots on the floor. There's just no fixing that. So you guys need to keep that in mind when you're asking me about upgrading some of these vintage speakers. There's a limit as to how far you can take them. And in some cases, some of the drivers can be upgraded because some of the earlier drivers were just that poor, especially in the tweeters. You could upgrade to a dome tweeter. But keep this in mind. Whenever you take a speaker, any speaker like this one, and you decide, I want to put in a better tweeter. Okay. The trick then is to find one that fits the hole. It's going to have to fit the hole and it needs to be flush. See how this tweeter is nice and flush with the surface? If it's setting on top of the surface, the corner edge of the tweeter is going to cause some diffraction. It's going to mess up the response a little bit. You don't want that. You want to find one that fits the hole and is going to be flush with the front baffle. And then a whole new crossover is going to have to be designed for that speaker. So we're not just upgrading a speaker anymore. We're designing a custom speaker based on some vintage parts. So for some of you guys with these vintage speakers, and there's a certain nostalgia around them, you want to upgrade, you want to fix your dad's speakers that he grew up with or something of that nature, and there's an emotional attachment and you want to make them better. Not a problem. We can make those better. We can go about it. It's a custom design. You're going to have to send me the speaker. We're going to have to mount whatever new drivers in there and measure and test those speakers and design a crossover based on the acoustic output of those drivers in that speaker. We can't design a crossover based on some drivers. Don't think you're just going to send me some drivers and I'm going to design a crossover for them. It doesn't work that way. When you change the baffle, when you change the height of the baffle, the width of the baffle, the edges, they say have sharp corners. That's going to cause some diffraction issues right there that I may have to compensate for in the network versus a rounded edge versus a smaller baffle. Anything that you do to that baffle shape changes the output of those drivers. So the crossover has to be designed based on those drivers in that box. So there's no getting around designing a network for something that isn't here. I know there's a lot of guys out there that think they can simulate this or simulate that, or they can calculate this, or it doesn't work that way. You can't design based on electrical parameters and really get great results. What if this tweeter is moved further forward? What if it's moved further back? What if the voice coil, the woofer is further forward, or it's a bigger woofer and the voice coil is further back? We have to take into account that time delay, that effect of what we call the phase relationship in the crossover. We have to take that into account to design it. So in order to do that, it has to be here. It has to be physically here. So step one, send in the speaker. Then we can measure and test it and see what's going on. So let's look at this one. These guys sent in this little SVS speaker. It's the SVS Ultra bookshelf speaker. So let's look at the frequency response. As you can see on the frequency response, it's not bad, but it's a little imbalanced. If you look, there's a little bit of a hump at around 1 kHz. There's a little bit of a crown there. That's going to be an area of brightness, and it's right in this woofer's range, a little area of brightness, and then it drops off, and you'll see the tweeter level is down across the board. If we look at the frequency response of the individual drivers and where they fall, you'll see where they cross, and you'll see the tweeter is starting kind of a more gradual roll off, and it's diving down into the woofer, whereas the woofer's sitting proud for a little bit. There's that hump, and then it drops. And if you look at the end of the woofer's range, you see a little hump. You'll see a little hump there at the bottom. It's around 4,000 hertz. You'll see a little peak there. That's some breakup going on in this cone of the woofer, and it's not completely accounted for, so you see it there. If you look at the horizontal off-axis response, you'll see it starts to lose output horizontally very smoothly. Not a problem there. And if you look at the vertical off-axis, that's as we're moving the microphone up. The time delay between the two isn't that bad. We're showing that it's starting to drop off a little as we go up, but it's not bad at all. So it's maintaining a relatively reasonable amount of time delay between the two drivers over a pretty good range. Now, impedance curve looks very smooth. It's a 4 ohm speaker, nothing there. And if you look at the spectral decay, you'll see the spectral decay is also pretty smooth. But if you look right at 4 kHz, you can see a little ridge there, a little ringing going on right there at 4 kHz that's in the woofer's response. So looking at this one, I've measured and tested it. What would I do? Well, I would get the peak at 1 kHz out of the woofer's response. Let's bring that down a little and smooth that out. And let's bring the tweeter level up so that it's balanced and match the slopes. And we'll get rid of that hump at 4 kHz that's in the woofer's response. Let's get rid of that. That's a source of ringing, and we'll fix that. So very simple fixes, no problem there. Danny, what's it going to cost? I don't know. I don't know yet. This is the evaluation stage, remember. I'm going to measure and test it, and I'm going to give you that feedback. Here's what I recommend. I recommend that we design a new crossover for it to fix those issues. Another reason I would recommend designing a new crossover for it, the crossover that's in these are really cheesy. At least they did use a poly cap and a little iron core inductor on the tweeter. There's a sandcast resistor on it. There's an iron core inductor on the woofer, boo, and an electrolytic capacitor on the woofer, boo. That all that's going to smear the signal, so it's going to give it a very smeared sound, and you don't want that. We can fix that. We can just simply upgrade the parts quality, large air core inductor on the woofer, a poly cap, much cleaner sound, and we can step up the quality of the parts on that tweeter and get a whole lot better sound out of them. The wiring, again, it looks like aluminum wire even. We can upgrade the quality of the wire, get rid of the cheesy bonding posts, which are ferromagnetic, and you don't want this in your signal path either, this connection. Drop a set of tube connectors in there and throw in a sheet of no-res, because it's a little bit of a hollowy sounding box. We can damp that out with some no-res. All of that. That's what I recommend doing to these things. So that will be next. Next, I will wire all of this directly to the output here. I'll run some wires out the back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this thing up and measure it, and I'm going to look at the frequency response of the drivers, and I'm going to grab the parts that I know that it needs in order to fix that response. And I'm going to hook those parts on there, and I'm going to shoot it again. And I'm going to look at what it did to the frequency response. I'm going to look at the woofer's response, and I'm going to see if it's got the shape that I want it to. If not, I'll adjust the parts. I'll grab a different inductor or a different capacitor and reshape that so that it has a more natural roll-off and has a better looking response curve. And then the parts quality and the quality of the wire and the connector, all that's going to make a tremendous improvement in clarity and detail. So if you own stuff like this, it's very much worth it to spend a little bit of money on higher quality parts. It's a fun project. You get to build out a little network, you get to hook everything up, you get to learn about this stuff. This is the best part of the hobby, getting to figure all this stuff out, learn how it works, and then in the end, getting a product that sounds a lot better, a whole lot better. It'll sound in such a way that you can really enjoy the music, and that's what this is all about, enjoying the music. Now, if you don't own this speaker, I wouldn't say rush out and buy one of these so you can purchase the upgrade kit so you can then fix it and then get to that point. If you are already a hobbyist and you enjoy the building process, skip fixing what you already have and just go straight to one of our kits, like an XLS Encore kit that starts at $249. You're already ahead of this in performance to begin with. And then you start adding the upgrades that we offer for it. So we offer upgrades to our own products. Now you're at a super high level for less money than you would have spent with these to begin with. You will have to build your own box or put your own box together. We do have flat packs available. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of other kits that are all out there and all different price points and different segments of the market as far as what they're designed specifically for. I mentioned the XLS Encore because it's a comparable size type of speaker. So if you're starting from scratch, it's always better in most cases to just go with a kit. If you own something, you're already attached to it, you like it, you want to keep it, the cabinets look fantastic, and these SVS makes great cabinets. This is their kind of a piano white, I guess, or gloss white. They have piano black. Cabinets look great. If you already own it, you want to take it to another level, upgrading may be the thing for you. But keep in mind, if I've never designed something for your particular model, first step, you're going to have to send it in. It's free. It's absolutely free. I'll measure it, I'll test it, I'll give you all the measurements that like you just saw on this speaker, and I'll tell you exactly what it needs. And then you can decide, you know what, I think I'd rather just go ahead and build one of your kits. That's great. Or you may think, hey, let's see how far we can take it. Design a new network for it. And I will, a lot of times with a popular speaker, I'll design the network for free, because I'm going to make that up selling 20 more of the same thing to somebody else. So you're going to wind up getting all that design work for free. All you're having to do is just pay for the parts. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if it's a one-off, if it's a custom speaker you've been trying to build and you need help with it, obviously I'm not going to do all that design work for free, because I can't amortize it out over 20 more. It's just going to be a one thing for you. Same with those vintage speakers. You have me upgrade some of those vintage speakers. We start changing out drivers and doing things like that. You're going to have to pay for a little bit of design work. Now, I try to be as generous with you guys as I can, and I don't charge you a lot for it. I enjoy doing the design work. That's my fun. I get to do it, and I wish all I had lined up all day was design work instead of answering literally 100 emails a day saying, yes, the prices are per pair. Yes, I can upgrade your Wharftail thingamajigs. Yes, I do need the speaker here in order to measure and test it. I answer those same questions every day. Yes, they're priced per pair. So, if you're out there watching the video, hopefully you don't have to ask me those same questions. Can I upgrade your something? Yes. First step, send it in to me. Or ask me if I've ever worked on that particular model. I might have something for it, but if not, you're going to have to send it in. You're going to have to cover shipping both ways. That's okay. Sometimes it's still worth it. You're still not spending that much to upgrade your SVS Ultra. We'll see what happens with this one. Maybe I'll do a video on it next week. It could be one of those Martin Logans that came in. That's going to be an interesting one that I'm going to be working on as well. I've already done some measurements and gutted it and realized there's a lot of room for improvement there. So let's see what happens. And I've still got some more really cool stuff that's going to be new for this year coming up that you don't want to miss. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks.